Thank you, Randy. My name is Alan, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. So it's really good to be here. My sponsor is Randy, who just introduced me, and my sober date is July 19th, 2013. If I keep trudging and walking this road of happy destiny, then I'll celebrate 11 years in a couple weeks. And whenever I say that out loud, I do get this feeling of gratitude, and sometimes I surprise myself that I can be in these spaces that I'm trusted to come up here and to share my experience, strength, and hope. And that's a lot of what I reminded myself last night when I'm staying up and the anxiety is starting to kick in, because I realize that I'm going to go to this convention in Nashville that I've never been to before, actually, and I'm going to share my story, and I get in this place where a lot of us, I think, can relate to this, where it's, what am I going to say? How am I going to say it? And I have to remind myself, this is just my story. I'm not a professional speaker. I don't travel around the world and do this. But I am someone who looked at my sponsor not long ago, and I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. The way for me to be of service in this program right now is that when someone does ask me to share my story, I will always say yes. And so that's something that I do. I always say yes when someone asks me to share my story. And I'm grateful for Randy. I have to say that out loud. My almost 11 years of, and my friends know I'm a crier. It's a part of my story. But Randy has been my sponsor and my mentor. And he has walked this road with me almost 10 years of my 11 years of sobriety, and I'm so grateful for that. And I'm grateful to see a lot of familiar faces here. I call them my people, my home group, my friends, people that I have healthy relationships with, that I know love me and that I love dearly. These are those people that I know that I can call when I need them. I have faced some adversity in sobriety. I've had some tough moments, and these are those people that I know that I can reach out to and lean on, and that I know love all of who I am. And that's a gift of sobriety. That's a gift of recovery that has been given to me because of this program. And really quick, I have to just give a little shout out to my mom and dad who are here and who I love and who never give up on me. So for that, I am grateful. And I'm surprised you're here at 10 p.m. And really grateful for that. A lot of you are here at 10 p.m. This is great. I wasn't quite sure what it would look like. I know there's dancing and karaoke going on too. So I love to dance, but not good at karaoke. Actually, I sing in my car all the time. I want to start out by saying that, I swear God works in mysterious ways. My higher power is always working in my life. If I'm open to it, then I really see it. And, lately I have had these moments, these feelings of loneliness in sobriety. And there's been more nights than I have wanted of kind of laying in bed at night feeling alone. And, it's a part of where I am in my journey. And sometimes it's a sucky feeling. My sponsor constantly reminds me, he's like, Alan, you're not alone. You're not alone. And then I'm reminded of the first AA meeting that I ever went to. I was 19 years old, and I walked into 202. It's across the street from Cafe Coco, if you're familiar with the Nashville area and been around forever. And I would hang out at Cafe Coco a lot. I loved Cafe Coco because you were either like passed out on the table, drunk and high, or you were sober. There was a clubhouse right across the street, and I remember walking in there, and I remember an older gentleman, placing his hand on my shoulder after I shared, and he said, "My friend, you never have to be alone again." And I'm constantly reminded of that in this program. I've never been born and raised here in Nashville, sober almost 11 years, and I'm going to say out loud, I've never been to this convention and this conference here, this Music City AA conference, Roundup, thank you. You can tell I've never been. But I walked in here and just seeing like all of these sober people and being surrounded by so many people that I don't know yet I know really well. And it's a really good feeling. And I've been reminded so much just in the 3 hours that I've been here that I'm not alone. And I've really, really needed that. Another gift of this program and another gift of sobriety. I was at that 7:30 p.m. speaker meeting, and I just kind of looked around at everyone in the room. I sat down at a table when I first got here. I didn't see anyone I knew, and I was kind of feeling like the new guy walking into school, and I just sat at a table by myself. And then this lady comes up. She's like, "You want some candy?" And she threw candy at me, and she's like, "You want some potato chips with your chicken sandwich?" I'm like, "Sure." And this other guy was like, "Hey, you want a lemon bar?" And I just, it was nice. It was one of those things where it was like, "Hey, I don't know you, and you don't know me, but there's something that we really relate on, and that's what brings us here." And I think that's just so powerful. I always remind myself, I always say the people who get to walk in this gift of sobriety and recovery, we really are the lucky ones. We are so blessed to be able to have this way of life. And I need that reminder more often than I want to admit. And I've gotten that in the 3 hours that I've been here. Selfishly, that's part of why I say yes when people ask me to share my story, because I always leave just feeling like I'm on top of the world. And I'm reminded why I first walked into an AA meeting. I'm reminded why I work step one 100% every day. I'm reminded why I say I'm Alan and I'm powerless. And I need y'all. So selfishly, that's why I say yes. I've been in a lot of reflection in the month of July. I reflect a lot, actually, constantly reflecting, and my friends know that. But in the month of July, I really do a lot of reflecting, and the 4th of July specifically. It was 2011, and I was working at a liquor store that my mom owned, and was working there, and it was the 4th of July, and I decided that, and I had kind of been in and out of this sobriety thing a little bit, but decided that I wanted to go to a celebration, a little party out in Fairview, Tennessee. And I went out there, and like I do, I don't remember anything that happened that night. Since the moment alcohol touched my lips, I was a blackout drinker. That's how I drank. I never remembered. Sometimes it's actually hard for me to get up and share my story because there's so many parts of it I just don't really remember. A lot of the things that I say were things that were maybe told to me later on. And that night I decided to get into my car and to go from Fairview all the way over to East Nashville. And don't remember getting in my car. Don't remember much about that night. But on July 5th, in 2011, I woke up in the hospital. And there wasn't a lot of information that was being given to me at that time, but I had that feeling that something bad happened. Something bad happened, and I remember the nurse one of the first things she said to me was, "Have you ever heard of AA?" And I was like, "You have no idea." And so then I'm thinking, well, why is she asking me that? And I started to find out that I was driving at a really high rate of speed. I keep the police report. I still have it after 13 years, if my math is right. And I was driving at a very high rate of speed, and I hit another car on the interstate, going right over the Cumberland River, and their car flipped. And there was 4 people in that car, and they were actually headed back to Kentucky. They had come to Nashville to celebrate the 4th of July, and with their family to celebrate Independence Day, and they were headed back to Kentucky to be with family and to continue their holiday festivities, I'm sure. And I hit them. And I woke up with little information about what happened. I didn't know how badly someone had been injured. And I think about that family a lot. What I do know is that no one was seriously injured. There was a few broken bones, I believe. But in July, I always think about them. And there's been moments that I've really wanted to write them or figure out who they are, and then I thought, well, I might not need to open that door or that can. But my hope is that my amends to them is every day that I wake up and I work step 1, and every day that I remain sober. And I hope that can be my amends to them. But I've been in a lot of reflection because Steve Lee, a dear friend of mine, and my old boss, he asked me to come and share my story and to speak. And I thought, well, there's God working in my life. You know, I get to come up here in front of all you, and I get to share my experience, strength, and hope. And I get to give you a little glimpse into my story. Some you might be able to relate to, and some maybe not so much. But I get to do that on July 5th, so 13 years later. And again, that is another gift of this program. That's a gift of sobriety, that I get to do that. And so for that, I'm really grateful. I was born and raised here in Nashville. The outline I tend to follow is just what's best for me is what it was like and what happened and what my life is like now. But I'll give you a little glimpse into what it was like for me. And I was born and raised here in Nashville. I recognize a lot of privilege in my story too, as I've gotten older and the more that I remain sober, I see some of that privilege in my story. I came from a family that was always really supportive. My mom and dad are here tonight. They've maybe sometimes too supportive. I don't know. Well, never mind. I was going to ask you about the Al-Anon. Are you going to an Al-Anon meeting soon? Okay, good. Yeah. But I do. I came from a family that was always really supportive, a family that I knew would always pick me up when I fell. And I fell a lot. Even as a kid, I always described myself as someone who was very, very sensitive and emotional. So I'm a feeler. I always say I still am very sensitive and very emotional. I'm a feeler. And feelings were always really... they were difficult for me. My relationship with feelings was tough, and it was really uncomfortable. And I always felt like an outsider. I always had that feeling, I could be in a room with 100 people, and 99 of them could love me and accept me and say kind things about me, and there could be one person that didn't maybe accept me and maybe judge me a little bit. And I would focus in on that one person. And I would take that all in and I would stuff it, and it would stick. And I always say I was kind of like a sponge, and those things would just stick. And I got to this place in my life where I needed to figure out how I cannot feel some of these uncomfortable feelings. Mental illness is a part of my story. You'll hear a little bit of that. Many different substances are a part of my story. Alcohol was always my primary substance. I always say it was the one that was my best friend and my worst enemy all at the same time. Before I discovered alcohol, I engaged a lot in self-injurious behavior. That's a part of my story. For me, it was immediate gratification. I was always looking for that. I still look for that. I find it in fitness now. My friends know that. And I'm always looking for something. I'm always looking for that relief, that immediate relief, right? And so before I discovered alcohol, for me, it was self-injurious behavior. That was a way for me to find some sort of immediate relief, for me to find a way to kind of go to a different place, to not feel some of these uncomfortable feelings. I actually remember the very first time I ever took a drink. And I was actually 17 years old. And I was bored one night at home. And there was I knew where my parents kept the wine, little cabinet. They weren't really drinkers. I always joke around about my mom. She could have a half of a glass of white Zinfandel, and she's like, "Woo!" She gets that little sparkle in her eye, and she knows it's time to put it down, to stop. And I remember when I took my first drink, and my mom may remember this too, because I woke her up vomiting in the bathroom. But that was the way that I drank from the very, very beginning. I have never known what it's like to socially drink. But the moment alcohol touched my lips, the moment I got that feeling, I remember actually looking in the mirror, and I can actually remember just looking at myself, and I remember smiling, and I remember thinking, my God, I have figured it out. This is great. I just found exactly what I'm looking for. And that is really when, my relationship with alcohol began. It really became, it became this friend that I needed. It took a little bit to turn on me. In the beginning, there were some moments that were maybe fun. But I would also say that in the beginning, there were some really, really bad moments from the very start. And the moment I would drink, the moment alcohol would touch my lips, we hear about that allergy to alcohol. And that is my truth. I was a blackout drinker from the very beginning. If I was drinking, I was always looking for something else. I was looking for other substances. I was looking for other ways to find that immediate gratification. I went to treatment for the first time at 19 years old. I went to Cumberland Heights, River Road near Ashland City, and did their inpatient program for about 30 days and, would remain sober for a few months. And I always say the most dangerous time for me was actually when I started to, some of the promises would maybe start coming true in my life a little bit, and things would fall into place. I was going to meetings. I had my sponsor. I was working the steps. I was going to bed at a decent time. I was holding a job for a little bit that wasn't at a liquor store. And, and then I would start thinking, you know what? My mom could have a half a glass of wine. Why can't I? Or Sally can and Sam can. Why can't I? Maybe I can. Maybe I can do that. So I'd kind of slowly stop connecting with my sponsor. And then I may stop going to meetings as much, and then I would slowly just disappear. And then there'd be that time where it's like, if anyone in AA called me or if anyone was sober, I was like, leave me alone. I don't want to talk to you, right? Because you remind me of things that I don't want to be reminded of. And then I was right back where I left off. Time and time again. And that is a lot of my journey, part of my story, and it doesn't have to be everyone's story or parts of their story, but part of mine is relapse and being in and out of this program, being in and out of sobriety, going to treatment, getting sober, starting to work the steps, getting a sponsor, and then I really struggled with that mental obsession that they talk about. I'd get sober, but I was always constantly thinking about alcohol. It really bothered me. I remember the moment that mental obsession was lifted for me. And it was 2013. I had been to treatment maybe 3 or 4 different times. I loved going to Vanderbilt Psychiatric Hospital. I was there 3 or 4 times too. It was a nice little, I loved treatment. It was a nice little break, great food. Sometimes I felt like I was on a little vacation. And I remember 2013, it was July 18th. I had been in and out a lot, and I had probably been drinking again and using substances for, maybe about a month. And I remember a friend was like, Alan, why don't you come have some pizza with me, and let's just come have a calm night. I said, okay, you're right. I'm going to come have some pizza, and then I'm going to go home. Well, I went and had some pizza, and I decided I wanted to have a beer, And for me, it was like I would find myself just all of a sudden there was a beer in my hand, it was touching my lips, and boom, it was like it just happened. And I was handcuffed that night. I had more than one beer, and I remember my friends know this story. I think I was in the middle of Church Street. Church Street, I was a club kid. I loved the clubs. I loved going out to the clubs. I loved partying at the clubs. I was a binge drinker. I would do a lot of binge drinking, or I'd go out, I'd drink, and I'd use, and I'd do it for several days, and then I would need to be able to breathe for a second, and then I'd go back and I would do the same thing. That's how I did a lot of my drinking and using. But I remember I was in the middle of Church Street, and I had my arms outstretched, begging for a car to just run me over. And that was so much of my story. I would wake up in the morning and I would have bruises all over my body. I would have cuts. There were moments when I couldn't walk because of something that I had injured. And people would, I remember my mom asking me, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. I don't remember. And a lot of times I would think, well, who did I fight with? I was not a nice person when I drank. I was very mean. Jekyll and Hyde. That's what people would call me, Jekyll and Hyde. And I remember I would wake up thinking, well, who did I fight with? Because I always thought that I, was like some strong, beastly man, and that's far from the truth. And I would wake up, and then I would be told, well, you didn't fight with anyone, Alan. You did that to yourself. And I would get so intoxicated, so drunk, and I would hit myself. And I would call myself names. And I would say these things that I wouldn't say to my worst enemy, to myself. And for a lot of me, the bottom that I hit was that place that I felt inside. It was that relationship that I had with myself. It was a very unhealthy relationship, if we even call it a relationship. Part of my story is this acceptance of who I was. I really struggled with my sexual orientation and coming to this place of being okay with being a gay man. And that was really difficult for me. I grew up Catholic here in in Nashville, and so I think a part of that maybe had some to do with it. And so I would say a lot of derogatory terms towards myself when I would get intoxicated. I would call myself a lot of slurs because I really believed a lot of that about myself. They talk about there are symptoms that are much greater and deeper. And there was so much of that was inside of me. There was something so much deeper and greater than alcohol. Now, the thing is when I drank and when I put alcohol to my lips, there was that allergy and I couldn't stop it. I didn't know how to stop. But there was a reason why I first picked up that drink, right? And that's what this program has helped me do too. It's helped me find some of that healing and come to this place where I can sit up here and say that I love myself, and I'm proud of who I am. And now when there's 100 people in a room and 99 of them love me and accept me and one doesn't, I pay attention for the most part to the 99 to the 99 that love and accept me. But I remember the next day after being handcuffed. I didn't like the police. That always scared me. I always somehow avoided the law. But I was handcuffed that night. And I remember the next day, I remember literally putting my hands up. I had been in and out of this. I had been going on this journey. I think I was really tired. There had been a lot of those outside consequences that we all know so much about. Fired from so many jobs, strained relationships. I remember my brother-in-law looking at me one day, and I had been hallucinating in his yard with his children present. And I remember the next day him looking at me and saying, "Alan, until you get it together, I don't want you around my kids." And I was always really excited to be an uncle. It was always something that was really important to me, and I wanted to be a good role model, and I wanted to be a good uncle. And that was devastating for me to hear that you can't be around my kids anymore. But yet I didn't stop. I wasn't ready. After my car wreck in 2011, it took me another 2 years to get sober. I stayed sober for 10 months. But I remember physically putting up my hands on July 19th. And I remember thinking to myself, I've got to do something different. I can't do this anymore. And I called a friend that I knew in the program. I never lost what I had gained from those times that I was in some of those meetings and the sponsors that I had worked with in the past. That stuff stuck with me. And I remember calling him, and he said, "Okay, Alan," because he had heard from me a lot. He was like, "Glad you called, but you're going to call this guy." And I was like, rude, but okay. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it. I didn't know who this guy was. Didn't really want to call him. Kind of scared me a little bit. But I thought, you know what? This is a part of me letting go and stepping out of the way. Something that I had not done. I was like, I got to do something different. And I remember calling him, and he said, okay, yeah. He was like, I heard that you might call. And he was like, I want you to meet me at Club 62. I was like, okay, I'll go to Club 62. And I showed up to Club 62, and that became my home group. That gentleman became my sponsor for my first year of sobriety. Club 62, it was a midnight meeting. And nighttime was always a really dangerous time for me. I did a lot of my drinking and using at night, and I needed something at night. I needed sober people at night. I needed a meeting at night. And so it was this midnight meeting at Club 62, and I went to a midnight meeting every night for my first year, except on Wednesdays it was at 10:30. And that place saved my life. I would go to that midnight meeting, and I'd go to that meeting, it'd get done at 1, and we'd hang out on that porch, or we'd go to Athens Greek restaurant or Waffle House, and we would hang out until 3 or 4 in the morning. And I got a job of being a bellman at Gaylord Hotel. I was really proud of that. I made $3.50 an hour, and I worked for tips. And I remember working there, and I remember a lady coming in, and she was visually impaired, and they were like, "Alan, you're gonna work with her, and it was a conference that was happening at the hotel, and they said you're gonna walk her around for the next 4 days, and so we're gonna have you do that." And I was like, "Okay, well, I make $3.50 an hour," and so I was like, "Is she gonna tip me?" And they're like, "We'll figure it all out. Don't worry about that right now." I was a little resentful, and I was probably about 4 months sober at that time. So I walked this lady around, got her from A to B, from ballroom to ballroom, and I really got to know her. And I opened up a little bit about my journey and my story, and she opened up about her journey and her story. And she opened up about her son and recovery. And we really connected. And I'll never forget her. And I remember after those 4 days, I remember thinking, my God, I didn't think about drinking for 4 days. And I was like, ooh, that's that mental obsession leaving. That's that part of me letting go. That's that idea of what is it like for me to be of service to someone else, to get outside of myself. I constantly remind myself of that moment. I never thought that I would get to that place where I could stop thinking about taking a drink. And I thought that would always take me down in my sobriety until I actually let go and I was of service to someone. And I didn't think about drinking for 4 days. And that totally changed my recovery in that moment. And I remembered that moment. And I decided I didn't want to go to a midnight meeting anymore. It was getting a little late for me. And I was going to bed around 9, 10 o'clock, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, doing my little meditation. And I decided I wanted to venture out. And I wanted to go to Lambda. And now Lambda was the LGBTQAA meeting. I'll be honest, for my first year, I wanted to be very far from the LGBTQ community. I did a lot of my partying. I did a lot of my drinking and my using in that community, with a lot of that community, in the clubs. For the LGBTQ community, a safe place for us is a club. That's where we find community. That's where we find safety. And that's where we find that we can hold the hand of someone and not feel like something bad may happen. So it was this weird relationship where it was like, this is a safe space for me, but also this is a place that I don't need to go right now. But I also didn't want to feel alone as a queer man trying to get sober. And I remember going to Lambda, and I met some of my closest friends now and my sponsor. And it is my home group and has been my home group for the last almost 10 years. And a big part of my life. I try my best to go every Monday and Thursday. My sponsor texted me on Thursday. I was off of work for the holiday, and so it just really messed me all up and forgot what day it was, and the meeting's at 7:30, so here I am. I'm almost 11 years sober, and I meet with my sponsor every week. I check in with him constantly, and if I don't, you better believe he's going to message me. That's the kind of sponsor I need still to this day. 7:35. Alan, you okay? I'm like, why is Randy texting me, asking me if I'm okay? I'm fine. Well, I forgot. I told him I was going to be at the meeting, and I forgot it was Thursday. But I still need that in my life. I need that accountability. I need that tribe and those people that are going to hold me accountable. I need my sober family, and I have found that. The spiritual part of this program has been a journey for me, and it's constantly a journey, and it's constantly changing, and I'm constantly trying not to complicate it, and I'm just trying to keep it simple. That's what Steve Lee told me before I came up to share my story. He said, Alan, just keep it simple. I'm like, okay. I'm always trying to complicate everything, figure it all out. I want the answer. And some days being out in nature is my higher power. Some days my home group and Lambda is my higher power. Some days, going to a Catholic church is my higher power. Some days, going to United Methodist Church is my higher power. It changes for me all the time, and I'm okay with that now. And I need to remind myself, that that's okay. But the spiritual part of this program has been an important part for me. Also, what's been very important for me, that's why I wanted to wear my shirt, is that I always say that I'm sober and I'm not boring. There are some moments that I am actually kind of boring, but for the most part, and I love Dateline. I watch that most nights. You won't find me out at the club anymore. But I have a lot of fun. I have so much fun in this program. I travel. We go to dinners all the time. We go hiking. We do athletic events together. There are so many fun things that I do in my life. My cup is really full. And I have to remind myself that. Because there's things that I thirst for in sobriety. There are some things that I feel like I'm missing in my life. And I have to remind myself how full my cup is. And how much fun that I do have in sobriety. I'm very open about being in recovery and being sober. And I'm very open about being someone who is proud to be in the LGBTQ plus community. Those two things are really important to me, so that shame does not take over. Because when shame takes over for me, it's a really, really dangerous place. And I have found that when I'm out loud about my recovery, the more opportunities for me to be of service. The more opportunities that I find that people reach out and say, Alan, I know you're sober. How'd you do it? Where's an AA meeting that I can go to? Can I go with you? And so that's part of why I'm out loud about being sober and being a person who is in recovery. It's been really important for me to stay involved. And that when things are really good in my life and when I'm feeling grateful and things have fallen into place in my life and the promises have come true, that I need to go to a meeting, because that was always the dangerous time for me. In my sobriety, I had goals, and I really wanted to help people. I had tried to go to college a couple of times in Murfreesboro, but I discovered meth, and I didn't finish. And the furthest I ever went was Murfreesboro. I tried going to college at 18. I dropped out. Tried at 19. Dropped out. It's always really important for me to say that we all have different goals. When I got sober, and for me it was that I wanted to help people, and I really wanted to go back to school. It doesn't have to be everyone's goal. I don't think that defines who we are, what we're capable of. But I wanted to be a therapist, and I was like, dang it, I got to go to school to do that, and a lot of it too, I felt like. But I was really scared. I struggled in school. School was really hard for me growing up, and I never felt smart. There's still moments that I don't feel academically smart. And that's also a dangerous place for me to be and to go. But I decided that 2 years into my sobriety, I wanted to go back to school. And I took one class at Nashville State Community College. And it was an introduction to social work class. And I made an A in that class. And I don't think I'd ever made an A before in my life. And it felt really damn good. And I thought, well, maybe I can do this. And so the next semester I took 2 classes. And I made 2 A's. And then the next semester I took 3 classes. And I made 3 A's. And I thought, okay, maybe I am kind of smart. The most I ever took was 3 classes. And I took my time. I kept going to meetings. And I kept being involved in the fellowship. I kept working a program. I kept waking up and reminding myself, hey, Alan, you are an alcoholic. You are powerless. And because of that, I kept suiting up and showing up. And I went to school. And I finished at Nashville State. And I transferred over to Belmont University. And got a degree in social work. And I was like, I'm going to keep going. And I kept going. And I ended up getting a master's in social work. And then I became licensed, and I became an LMSW. And I think I still shock my parents when I say that I work as a therapist. I still shock myself, and I think sometimes I am sitting in session and I'm thinking, gosh, if only this client knew all of my story, would you really trust me? But what a gift, and it just happened to be a goal for me that I wanted to do. And I was able to accomplish that and achieve that because of sobriety. That's why. I get to work as a therapist now, and I get to work as a therapist at Belmont University for the students, and I get to specialize in substance use with the students, and I get to specialize in working with LGBTQ students at a Christian university. It's the greatest gift ever. And I'm always reminding myself that, Alan, you get to do this because you're sober. That's why. These are the promises that are coming true in my life. These are the promises coming true in my life. Sobriety is truly the greatest gift that I have ever given myself. I'm so satisfied with life. If something happened to me tonight, I'd leave this life really happy. And I don't know about you, but for someone like me, it feels really good to say that. That I know deep down inside that I'm happy. And I'm surrounded by people that love me and that trust me and that I love and that I trust. And that I have this healthy relationship with myself. My bottom was not the consequences, not the outside consequences that I had. That didn't keep me sober. My bottom was the way that I felt about myself. That feeling that I had inside, that dark place that I had inside. That place of looking at myself and thinking, God, I don't love you. And being in that place of not wanting to be here anymore and having those thoughts of wanting to take your life. Sobriety has had some really tough moments. And, I've experienced some loss in sobriety. I was in a long-term relationship, someone that I cared very deeply about. In 6 years. And we built a life together, and it felt good. It felt like something that I wasn't quite sure that I was ever going to have. I didn't know that I was capable of having that for many different reasons. And we got engaged, and it felt good. And I thought, this is awesome. This is the life that I dreamed of having. And that relationship abruptly ended. And it was a huge loss for me. And I remember leaving our home with nothing. Maybe a pillow. I think I even left my toothbrush there. And going back to my parents, again, they were always there. And I'm privileged. And I recognize that privilege. And I'm blessed to have that. Even though I only lasted about 2 weeks. Love y'all. But... And face that in sobriety, face someone. That was a challenging time for me. And the first place that I went was Lambda, was my home group, because I needed my people. I needed my family. I needed my sober siblings. And I remember opening up and sharing in that meeting and being surrounded by love. And again, being reminded that I'm not alone. Again, What a gift. That's a gift that sobriety has given me. I really am one of the lucky ones. Because I can go through these really tough moments in sobriety. I can still have anxiety, and I can still have symptoms of depression, and I can still have feelings of being alone, and I can still have bad days. But I don't ever think about taking a drink anymore. It's not an option for me. But what I do is I lean on my home group. I lean on my sponsor. I lean on my higher power. I talk to my higher power like I talk to a friend. I'm not much of the formal prayer type. It's more, I like to just let me have a conversation with you. Let's just talk this out, kind of. That helps me. And so finding those things, and that is what sobriety has given me as well. So I love the promises, the 9-step promises. I love hearing those. And it reminds me of how many of those promises are coming true in my life. So I may go ahead and wrap it up there. I'm always grateful to come up into this space and to be able to share my experience, strength, and hope, to be able to share my story. If you are new to this program, welcome. Welcome to a new and a better way of life. Happy, joyous, and free. I can sum up the steps with 3 things, and I believe it is the prescription for an alcoholic. I think I gave my sponsor this prescription. Trust God. 1, 2, and 3. Clean house. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Help others. 11 and 12. Trust God. Trust in something outside of myself. I am not God. I don't want to play God. That's a dangerous place for me. Clean house. Clean up my side of the street. When I do something wrong, when I say something wrong, where do I need to make amends? And I've had to make a lot of amends in my sobriety. I think I owe a couple right now that I'm up here sharing my story. Cleaning house, cleaning my side of the street, and then helping others. Being of service, getting outside myself, and helping someone else in this program and outside of this program. And that is the definition of AA and the 12 steps for me, and recovery and sobriety. Trust God, clean house, help others. Grateful to be here, grateful to be sober.